makes a difference whether it's bare rock, grass, which doesn't really interact with the wind very much, doesn't have much of a profile, shrubs, which have a larger profile and have more air blowing through it, or trees, which are much larger and have a significant amount of water with fog in it blowing through, and an opportunity to catch that water. So this is just a device that catches water from the fog sort of the same way the vegetation does.
Oh, how cool.
So it's just there and the fog blows through, it's caught on the screen, drips down into this funnel and goes into this rain gauge where it's measured. Even if it is raining, if those sensors are getting wet, it has to be coming from fog.
And how many of these cloud forest sensors do you have? We
have 5 sites. So there's 2 on Maui, 1 on Oahu, and 2 on the Big Island. Inside here is a funnel. So there's water coming in through this pipe, dropping into a funnel, and then below the funnel is what we call a tipping bucket. So the tipping bucket has 2 chambers and a pivot so that water's pouring into one side until it gets a certain amount of water, and then it tips over, dumps that water out, and then it fills up the other side, and then it dumps and goes back and forth. So to measure that, all we have to do is count the tips. We just have to have a device that counts the movement of that tipping bucket, which is pretty easy to do. So this pipe that's bringing the water in is going up slope. These pipes are all connected to troughs, long metal troughs, under the vegetation, collecting the water that's dripping down. This setup here is designed to measure how much water is rolling down or flowing down the stems of these plants. So there are collars on 2 of the stems, those silver collars there. They catch all the water that runs down, directed into that hose. The hose goes inside this pipe and into this tipping bucket rain gauge. What we want to do here is we want to be able to figure out the distribution of the spatial pattern of fog interception across the entire state of Hawaii. So we try to use as many bits of information as we can to piece together the history and the prehistory of our climate here in Hawaii. This cloud forest and this cloud zone that's down below us here is very, very important for a number of reasons in Hawaii. For one thing, it is an area that gets a lot of rainfall and gets additional water through interception or catching of the cloud droplets that then drip down and provide the input for our streams and our groundwater and our water resources, and all our uses of water depend on that. We study areas within the cloud forest on the windward side. We also study similar areas on the leeward side, such as where we are now, and we study areas above the cloud forest. One of the things that we found from putting this network of stations is that Kauai does not have the wettest place in Hawaii.
What?
That's right. Mount Waialeale is pretty wet, but one of our stations actually has been measuring more rain than Mount Waialeale. For our analysis over a 30-year period, we actually estimated slightly higher rainfall at a station named Big Bog on the eastern slope of Haleakala. We take advantage of observations, measurements that were taken long before I started making measurements here on Haleakala, and we have records in some cases that span 100 years. And with those records, we can really start to see how the changes are occurring. One thing we've done with that is to show how fast our climate has already warmed in Hawaii. So it has been warming over a 100-year period and is continuing to warm and is warming at a faster rate. Global climate change is primarily something having to do with warming, but it is also going to produce changes in other aspects of the climate, including rainfall. In Hawaii, changes in rainfall would probably be more important than changes in temperature. I think the most plausible scenario is that we will have a little bit less rainfall, or maybe a lot less rainfall in the drier areas of the island than we do now or have had in the past, and we'll have not much change or maybe a slight increase in rainfall in the wetter areas of the islands. Another change, I think, will be that we will have fewer storms, but those storms may be more intense. So we maintain a website, Rainfall Atlas of Hawaii, where we have all the information about rainfall for the whole state.
the Curriculum Research and Development Group in the College of Education at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. CRDG's training roots go back over 40 years. Through professional development programs, curriculum workshops, research on teaching methodology, individualized school and district training, and so much more. The Curriculum Research and Development Group, improving schools, improving education. CRDG.
Welcome back. We're at the University of Hawaii at Manoa with oceanographer Dr. Rosie Allegado and her graduate student Kalika Bennett from the UH Institute for Hawaiian Language Research and Translation. To uncover prior El Nino events, Rosie and Kalika are investigating the historical Hawaiian language newspapers from the 18 and 1900s.
I honestly do feel like we're just scratching the surface, because what we're looking at are the literal empirical observations. To really get into the deeper back in time ones, we will have to start interpreting the chants and the oli, and that gets super deep because Hawaiian was an oral language. There was all of this metaphor that was embedded in order to kind of key and signal to other things. So it's kind of like super deep Da Vinci Code, Dan Brown stuff, where you have to figure out what does it really mean. Imagine if instead of scientists publishing in these super esoteric journals that only other scientists read, imagine if all the data that we found and all the results we found, we had to translate into regular language that everybody could understand, because the data that we were looking at was important for survival. That's what these oli represent. These oli represent the science communication, like we are giving it to the masses, and it was all like that. So you had different levels. So you had chants that priests would only tell each other, and those were probably more like journal articles. And then you had the chants where like, we are telling you this because everybody in the public has to know this kind of information to plant plants or to, you know, go fishing and know these kinds of signs and omens. If you choose an indicator, like storms or hurricanes, then you have a list of different terms. Then you can identify all the mentions, and now you run into a big data problem where for one word like storm, you have 62,000 mentions, or one word like wind, you have 23,000 mentions, or rain, that's the big one that's crazy, is you have over 250,000 mentions in the Hawaiian language newspaper dictionary. And of course, if you have one grad student, that's kind of impossible. What you can do is you can sort it by number of mentions per year, and you can normalize that to, was this an unusual mention for that year? So you can kind of key in on specific years and specific locations. If we take just one newspaper and you look at rains, and so this is a histogram of events between 1869 and 1900. You have this one year, for example, 1870s. People are complaining of lack of rain and at the same time complaining of drought. So we thought that might be something interesting to look at. And you can see that indeed the same year where you have people complaining of lack of rain and too much drought, that overlaps nicely with this particular El Nino. And if you go into the newspapers, and this is particularly an article that was pulled from October 26, 1878, so you would think it would be wet. They're talking about Maui, Hana, which you think would be wet. They're talking about Kaupo, and I'll just read the translation, which is, there is crisis now in this land. The rain hasn't fallen, the land is parched, and it's as if God is keeping prosperity on this side of Kipahulu. And from Kaupo on, there is no rain. The features of this time are not like before. It's as if it has been burned by fire. The mountain is scorching and there's no grass growing. This other one is complaining about Makawao, and it's really specific. From the pen of Bilakupa, telling of the intense heat, the water has dried in the streams there, the cattle have all died, the sugarcane planters are searching for water in the mountains, the rivers of Makawao have not been like this dry for the past 30 years, and the sugar planters are lamenting about this problem. One of the books that I was saying was like, these are the omens, and when you read it and you're like, wait, no, these aren't omens, these are bioindicators. Who called them omens? And you realize like, oh, wine was translated by priests who were trying to convert people. They had this whole lens and framework of interpretation where things that Hawaiians were saying, they were like, oh, that's just superstition. When it was like, no, these are like tips for survival. When that fish comes in, that means this. It's not like it's not mumbo jumbo. It's like, this is phonology. Pua ka vili vili na nahu kamano. When the vili vili blooms, the sharks bite. And so vili vili are these these trees that used to bloom all along the coast in dry music forests. And it was this great thing where you didn't have to get in the water to know that it was a dangerous place to swim, because wherever the vili were blooming, you knew that to like October, we know that that's when the sharks get really, really aggressive, and that's when the most shark bites happen. Hawaiians didn't have to go in the water to know that, and that's really important because that's safety, that's water safety. There are other ones like Kvzk Tv Ch. So when the sugarcane is blooming, the he'e appear, and that's a really interesting one because he'e grow on about a 1.5 year cycle, where most of their growth cycle, they're planktonic and too small to see. But then all of a sudden they reach a certain size and you can see them on the reef. And that corresponds really nicely to the blooming of the sugarcane. And so it was this really crazy marriage of terrestrial and aquatic bioindicators where, again, for convenience, for efficiency, to save yourself time and to, for safety, you could look at these terrestrial things and know what was going on in the ocean. And they did that time and time again. This is the kind of knowledge that our kupuna had and brought with them, throughout all of their journeys and voyages across the Pacific, and kind of employed them into these easy to remember mnemonics to help all of us survive. The kumulipo, which is viewed as the creation chat, is totally rife with all of these pairings on land, pairings in the sea, pairings on land, pairings in the sea. And it says, as is this, as is the sea. And I think what that is it's a code it's a guide to say, we need to be paying attention to these two things together. I'm really fortunate to have Kvzk Bennett, who is a Hawaiian language graduate student, working with me to bring together and to really reveal this information that has kind of remained locked and inaccessible to most of the public. And so without him, we would not be able to be reading and finding this information that we have today.
The project that I'm working on focuses on researching through the Hawaiian language newspapers to understand what Hawaiians knew about climate patterns and to see how they might have interpreted El Nino events in the Hawaiian language newspapers. Rosie remembered that there was an omen tied to the alalaua and the aweaweo fish, which is this fish you see right here, the red fish. And the omen talked about the reddening of the sea, and the reddening of the sea would be like a sign of the impending death of an ali'i. And it was caused by the overabundance of alalaua or aweaweo fish. But from this article that you see here, calls this fish an i'ano malihini, which can be translated to mean an infrequently seen fish, which sort of suggests to us that it's probably tied to some cycle, or perhaps that their runs are episodic. And so what we did was we graphed that information. And then all of the years that we see these outliers often correlate to years of potential El Nino seasons. My favorite aspect of this is that we get to use the Hawaiian language repository. That 97% that is often unused and untouched gets put to the forefront. Our kupuna left knowledge within this repository for us. And so I think that through consulting it and incorporating it into what we do today, we truly honor them.
So we know that Indigenous people have been making these kind of observations and noticing these really long-term changes. And you can kind of also see that in fossil records, like in the coral record, you can see changes. Tree ring record, you can reconstruct paleoclimate. But so we wanted to use both of these approaches, was to look at both the tree rings that might be growing in Hawaii, as well as to really focus on the Native Hawaiian archival record. And for us, that would be the newspapers. So the other part of the project was to be able to tie in rainfall with this, because of course drought, the other side of drought is you can really see it in the plant species. So we were wondering if we could supplement the climate record, which only really goes back to 1950, by using tree rings. We came across introduced pine trees, which have tree rings. They're invasive, they grow faster, and you can repeat sample them without worrying about killing them. So they're normally round when you pull them out. We have a drill, and you drill them in like a corkscrew, and you pull it out. And we hypothesize that in these years of little growth, it's likely that that's because there was not as much photosynthesis. Knowing when these trees were planted using tree records, we can basically create a plot of the core. Most of the rapid growth happens around this period of time, and so this growth that we're seeing, we think may be due to more like a weather pattern. We basically picked areas on the Big Island kind of as best as we could corresponding to a transect. We were able to kind of look at this gradient and look at how these trees might have grown under these different conditions. So our long-term goal is to integrate all of these to extend our climate record and our information. So the global observational database is really good from 1950 on and is pretty spotty, but the oldest records tend to be about 1850. So that's as far back as we can go. Our newspapers overlap this database and goes from 1948 all the way back to 1834, so it can extend us. And what's interesting about the newspaper is that a lot of people put in knowledge even before then. So they're recounting tales and events that happened beyond then, so we can reconstruct even older events. And then we have our introduced conifers that overlap these. And then, you know, this would be very carefully selected if we were to do this. If we had to go into using endemic hardwoods that have rings, we could then, of course, corroborate all of these. And so the goal is for us to create a really good portrait of what happened regionally in Hawaii, again, to be able to provide regional solutions.
What is the most surprising thing that you've discovered in the course of this project?
I think the most surprising thing that we discovered was that there were so many observations of this kind that Hawaiians of the time were so much more aware of what happened. I mean, I think they lived their life so much more outside. I'm in an office right now. Most people were fishing, you know, because there was subsistence or, you know, growing taro or harvesting lauhala, that they had to know the life cycles of all of these things. And so they paid really good attention because it was intimately linked to their livelihood and survival. And so I'm always struck by just the volume of observations that ancient Hawaiians and not so ancient Hawaiians did.
We are looking for a few heroes, mentors, trailblazers, innovators, a passion to change lives, spark curiosity, open hearts, and awaken minds, help students answer the question, who am I? This could be your calling, but this is no job. It's the journey of a lifetime. Be a hero. Be a teacher.
How's it, everybody? I'm Ama. Aloha and welcome. Professor Iwaki and I would like to thank you for helping us keep our ocean clean. E mālama I ka moana. Care for our ocean.
This message is brought to you by the National Tropical Botanical Garden.
Talofa, olo e mai mo mai le tautua le ala talua le KVCK TV, Pango Pango, America, Samoa. You are watching KVCK TV Channel 2, Pango Pango, American Samoa.
Ola amo muerto le bato siva. Auma le bato siva. Ola so atu ai le bato pesi. Ya auma lo bato pesi me le bato siva. Ya ola atu po le so bato le fa silsilat. Ya so bato fa talanga le yo du le. ua koe kimu mai fu. Sau fo i ka ele lis kimunga. Ia ole fo i la koe ka ele fo. Ia o lango la mo lo kula mai. Ko ngiola. Ai ole a sau le makangi ele ku a vele ole ka. Ka lofa. Ole pese a falvao. Ole pese fa avao malo. Ole ingoa vo ile a falvao. Ole ingoa fa avao malo. O se ingoa e taua. Fa ingoa ai ale ole malai ma alele. Io ni fale tele. Pe io keneti Amerika. Lai ai le fale me ole malai ma alele lai o ge ko kelo ko le io ia. Lai fa ingoa ya keneti. O taua.